We turn next to the life and impact and the abiding memory of one of Ireland's best-loved songwriters, Percy French, born just 170 years ago.
Well, Percy French, well, I can tell you, was born in Clooney in Elphin, near Elphin, in the county of Roscommon in the year 1854. Actually, it's on the 1st of May. But
John Roach, singer and researcher of Percy French from the Rattlebag archives.
He was the second son of an impoverished Protestant landowner named Christopher French, and his mother, Emma, was one of the lovely daughters of the Reverend William Percy, who was a rector near Carrick-on-Shannon. Percy in his younger days was educated there privately by a man called the Reverend James Roundtree. Up till they were about 10 or 12 they were educated. And it was him, he was known as William Percy French, for many years, and that changed about the year 1900. But he said to him one day, Master Willie, he says, they were doing maths, he says, two parallel lines, he says, can never meet, he says, unless one of them is crooked. So from there, anyway, his father determined that he was probably good at the maths and determined to make him an engineer. He would be sent when he was about 12 or so to Windermere College outside London, where they had relatives around that area. And he would stay there for another couple of years before eventually coming back to Foyle College to be ground in maths. And where he says, Mr. Johnson there, he says, well, he built a great superstructure, he said, on a very flimsy foundation.
French then went to Trinity College.
His first song, it was written when he was in Trinity College as a student for a college concert. But he was always interested in music because himself and a fellow called Charles Manners met up in college. Now, Charles became a professional baritone singer in the Gilbert and Sullivan operas around that time after they left Trinity, and he created the role of the sentry in Iolante. So the two lads, when they were only allowed out on 2 nights a week, but they hopped over the back gate where the big gate is near Pew Street Garda Station now, and went out whenever they felt like it with the banjo strapped over the back, and back in the same way.
Well, again, I remember Abdul Bulbul Mir. Why it attracted me, as why all Irish ballads do, is that it had the story.
Frank Hart talking about one of Percy French's best known and earliest works.
I remember hearing it on the wireless as a child. The sons of the prophet are brave men and bold, and quite unaccustomed to fear. But the bravest by far in the ranks of the Shah was Abdul Bulbul Amir.
There was not exactly a controversy about it, you know. It was written, and he sold it for £5 and did not copyright it.
His daughter Etty French recalls how little her father made from this highly successful composition in his lifetime.
It was then pirated by another firm, and he never got anything for it at all. It was taken up by Ascherbergs very much later after he died, and they made a proper contract with us, and we get the royalties that he should have got.
Now the heroes were plenty and well known to fame in the troops that were led by the Tsar. But the bravest of these was a man by the name of Ivan Skavinsky Skavar.
They used to go to smoking concerts and perform at it.
Smoking concerts?
Yeah, they were concerts where they gathered together and there would be a chairman and we'd call on different people to perform. But there were a lot of smoke in those concerts.
But non-paying?
No, non-paying, purely for entertainment. And out of that, at that time, there's a group called the Bohemians that I belonged to myself, was founded in 1878, and Percy was one of the first performers. They don't know he was a founder member, but he was only across the road in Trinity, and this was founded in O'Neill's, just in Suffolk Street.
And was he actually an inspector of drains?
Well, the inspector of drains, he was an inspector of drains, but then he wasn't the only one, but certainly he was the best remembered one. There was a big drainage scheme going on in Cavan when he was up there for 7 years, and his job was, he did some engineering because a man told me one day he saw a little bridge is still there that Percy was the engineer on. But after that he got moved up and he went around the country, County Cavan, with a great jarvey called Paddy Riley, and he drove him around to the various places to meet tenants who had been discommoded by all this drainage work, and he was approving the grants for them. And to say if he erred on anybody's side, it was certainly on the side of the tenant.
And at what stage did the engineering background that he had go out of play completely?
Well, when he left Cavan, the engineering was, he was an engineer for the purposes of that he had qualified.
Percy French was born within 7 years of Black 47 in the middle of the famine.
Frank Hart.
And while his songs do treat, to an extent, on emigration, he doesn't take the hard aspect of eviction, hunger, fever, coffin ships, etc. Because people attending a concert of Percy French's, well, it certainly wouldn't be, they wouldn't be going home in a good humour after hearing of the thousands who died on their way to America.
Frank Hart is a singer and also a collector and an expert on the Irish ballad. Miles Dungan, in this edition of Rattlebag, asked Frank Hart where he would place Percy French in the Irish song tradition.
Well, Percy French is unique in the tradition itself. He stands alone in a section of Irish songs, and that's his humorous song. His songs have the rudiments of the rural ballad, the rural traditional ballad, but they lack the passion and expression of the anonymous ballad singer or the heavy ballad that would have dealt with the eviction or emigration. His songs were never offensive to anybody. They were written specifically for stage performance and more particularly for his own performance. He was hugely successful. The songs, I suppose you could say, could border on the stage Irish. They're just hitting onto that, almost in the vein of Somerville and Ross and their Irish RM type of feckless Irishman. But he laughed with us rather than at us. And he certainly endeared himself to the Irish people. His songs, they definitely struck a chord with the people, but they would have been sung more in the concert hall than they would at the ballad session as such. My father and mother knew all of Percy French's songs and sang them. I grew up listening to Percy French's songs, and how many of us didn't grow up with a verse of Paddy come back, Paddy Riley to Ballyjames up, or the mountains of Mourne sweep down to the sea.
John Roach here tells the original story of the original Paddy Riley.
As an actual man, he drove Percy around to most of the official work in a sidecar which was owned by the Lynches of Ballyjames up, and he worked for them.
This was after Percy French's engineering degree in Trinity, when he was with the Board of Works and for the 1880s, most of the 1880s, surveyor of drains in County Cavan.
And he brought around to all these places. I think over a period maybe of 5 or 6 of the years he spent in Cavan, Paddy was his comrade. And that's why he came back many years later looking for him. He'd emigrated to Scotland, and this was 1912, in September 1912, that Percy wrote this song at a picnic. And this was regretting that his old friend wasn't there, but I think there's a bit of Percy French in this song. I always believe that Percy was writing about himself, and Paddy Riley was brought in, by the way, because the 7 best years of his life, I believe, were spent in Cavan. And this is going back to 15 years, the great memories and the wonderful days in Cavan. So there's a little bit of Percy French, I always feel it, when I sing Come Back, Paddy Riley.
And this indeed can be our closing music this morning. More to mark the 170th anniversary of the birth of Percy French in next week's programme. Thank you for listening this morning, and good morning.
The Garden of Eden has vanished, they say, but I know the lie of it still. Just turn to the left at the bridge of Finney and stop when halfway to Cootill. 'Tis there I will find it, I know sure enough, when fortune has come to my call. Oh, the grass, it is green around Ballyjames Duff, and the blue sky is over it all. And the tones that are tender and tones that are gruff are whispering over the sea. Come back, Paddy Riley, to Ballyjames Duff. Come home, Paddy Riley, to me.
And that programme was presented.
This from the Music Department Archives.
Oh, the French is on the say, says the Shan Van Vocht. He'll be here without delay, says the Shan Van Vocht. He's been gone for many a day by them Saxons led astray. Och, sure them's the boys can pay, says the Shan Van Vocht. He has all his latest jokes, says the Shan Van Vocht, and he draws with lightning strokes, says the Shan Van Vocht. And that song with quaint refrain of the Clare excursion train you will want to hear again, says the Shan Van Vocht.
You may talk of Columbus a-sailing across the Atlantical Sea, but he never tried to go railing from Ennis as far as Kilkee. You run for the train in the morning, the excursion train starting at 8. You're there when the clock gives the warning, and there for an hour you will wait. And as you're waiting in the train, you'll hear the guard sing this refrain. Are you right there, Michael, are you right? Do you think that he'll be there before the night? Oh, you've been so long in starting that you couldn't say for certain. Still you might now, Michael, so you might.
That satire on the West Clare Railway came to be resented by some of those rail workers who depended on the branch line for their living. Some even believed it so mocked the railway that it helped to close the line.
Well, I'd say that Percy French's song, well, I'd say it was unfair in a way to the railroad, because I might say in all transport concerns you have a breakdown now and again, and I saw but very few of them. I meant to say during the war years, I thought the West Clare Railway was marvellous. I meant to say it brought all the traffic to Rush, Kilkee and all over, and they worked on turf. And I would say that Percy French's song, the West Clare never deserved. They could sing it in more high praise of it than they did.
It was not fair. It was exaggerated altogether. And the West Clare, the song killed it. Everyone going the road in were giving it a boot here and there, everyone you met. And if anything happened, it is the West Clare again. Then you might get, if we had more carriages, then we put a second engine on, and this engine that we put on in front of you, he mightn't be able to give you any assistance at all because you'd be in bad repair. There were 14 engines in it all told. 15 engines. And so the engines, the small engines that killed it in the beginning, in Percy French's time. And he chanced to be travelling when what I did was on it. But he killed it. Definitely Percy French killed it.
Percy French was also a noted artist, a painter.
Of course, the Irish ones are the ones that are the best known and also the best, I think.
This is his daughter, Etty French, and this is taken from the archives of Music from Middlebrowse.
Especially the bog scene and the seascape with a sort of breaking wave. He did, in fact, a great many copies of those, and people would always buy them, you see. He liked to get away from it. He liked painting in Jamaica, and he loved painting in Switzerland towards the end of his life. He loved the alpine glow and the snow on the mountains, and he did some very nice work there, but people still wanted the bogs, and so he went on painting them.
On the centenary of his birth 70 years ago, Kevin O'Kelly on Provincial News Roundup, a Sunday lunchtime programme of the time, Kevin O'Kelly featured a centenary concert held in French's original boyhood home in County Roscommon.
The concert was held in a marquee in the garden of Cluniquin House, and to begin the second half of the programme on the first night, an honoured guest was introduced. The Master of Ceremonies was Seamus Duke.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, to start off the final part of our programme, it gives me very great pleasure to introduce to you the late Percy French's youngest daughter, Miss Joan French.
Well, no doubt, as you came along tonight, I hope it was not too dark for you to see a thing called Welcome to Clooney Quinn posted up in various places all along the route. And that, I think, is a cue for saying a very short little poem of my father's, which he composed from something that was said to him while he was out sketching on the bogs one day near a little cottage, and the woman came out to look at his picture. And there was a shower of rain, and he was invited in. It's called A Kindly Welcome, and I hope that's what you found at Clooney Quinn tonight and every night during this week. Oh, it will only be a shower, though the wind is from the west. Just come in for half an hour and give yourself a rest. And is that what you were sketching? Just the turf stack and the winds, and the death of cold you're catching? Mary Ann, put out them hens. And this picture, do you say now you could sell for 30 bob? Still, this sketching in a way now is a very lonesome job. Oh, sure now, you're welcome, honey, to a little sup like that. Is it me be taking money? For what wouldn't feed the cat?
And that event was almost certainly organised by the Percy French Society of Roscommon, founded in 1957. The Percy French Society in County Down was founded in 1983, and Barry O'Neill, a member and editor of their journal, was one of the contributors to Rattlebag, and indeed spoke about Percy French as a painter.
Well, I think that was his main love. It was his hobby, really, and when he was off duty, so to speak, he spent his spare time painting in the nice places he visited around Ireland. And I think in many ways it's one of his enduring legacies is so many paintings of so many parts of Ireland. Very evocative indeed. I think our society has about 70 or 80 of his paintings, and they keep coming up at auction all the time.
And this is in the Heritage Centre in Bangor that you've got these paintings?
Yes, well, there are about a dozen of them on show there. The rest of them are kept under lock and key, but there's a nice permanent exhibition of paintings and other memorabilia in the Heritage Centre in Bangor.
And we think of Percy French songs as being cheerful and happy-go-lucky comic songs and all of that, but in his life there was a considerable amount of tragedy, wasn't there?
Well, there was one major tragedy, and that was the death of his young wife, Etty. She was Etty Armitage Moore. He met her when he was in Calvin, and they married in Dublin on the strength of his not very great income, I think, as editor of a magazine called The Jarvey. But a year after they married, she died in childbirth, and I think it changed him forever, and not a total change, but he was less of a carefree person after that tragedy, and some of his poems and songs reflect that part of his life. I'm thinking about songs like Gortna Mona, for instance.
Do you have a particular favourite of his songs?
Well, I like Come Back Paddy Riley, and I like Gortna Mona for different reasons, if you know what I mean. But as John Roach said there, they both reflect very much Percy French himself and the nature of the man. And I run a concert group from North Down, and we always finish with Come Back Paddy Riley, and the hair almost stands on the back of your neck as we get to the climax of that, and the plaintive notes of Come Back Paddy Riley. Beautiful end to that concert.
The baby's a man now, he's toil-worn and tough, still whisperings come over the sea. Come back, Paddy Riley, to Bally James Duff. Come home, Paddy Riley, to me. I love the young women of every land that always came easy to me. Just barring the belle of the Blackamoor brand and chocolate shapes of Fiji. But that kind of love is a moonshine and stuff, and never will addle me brain. For the bells will be ringing in Bally James Duff for me and my Rosie Kilrain. And all through spring comes over the sea. Come back, Paddy Riley, to Ballyjames-Duff. Come home, Paddy Riley, to me.
Percy French, who was born just 170 years ago.